Hello and welcome to the Problem Gambling Podcast. I'm Barry Grant, an addiction counselor with Extern Problem Gambling. And my co-host today, back again, is Tony O'Reilly, also an addiction counselor and works with us in Extern doing school talks all around the country and with a big focus on County Wicklow last year, where it was funded by the Bray Drug and Alcohol Task Force. Thank you very much to the task force for funding that. And also, we get some HSE funding in pockets for doing other school talks around the country. And some of the schools will pay for talks themselves. And that's something we're going to look at a little bit today because how young people engage with gambling is important, right? Like all the studies would show. I mean, the ESRI did one recently, but it's been known for quite a while that if a person starts gambling in childhood before the age of 18, the risk of having a gambling problem in adulthood is far higher. And I think the ESRI study found that it's double the rate or double the risk. So we thought we'd have a little look today on what sort of trends you're seeing, Tony, in the schools over the last few years. Because I mean, you've been doing the schools for how many years now?
Probably on a more full-time basis, probably at least 4 years, probably heading into the fifth year, doing them now. And year on, it's just been growing and growing, the demand from the schools. And a lot of the time schools will invite you back each year to speak to their TY students. And the teachers will always say it's an issue that they're seeing more and more in the classes, on the corridors of the schools as well. So about four, I think 4 years, probably heading into the fifth year, maybe sixth, and doing some bits and pieces. When we started off, would have been shortly after COVID. I think it really kind of took off when we got a bit of
Mm.
funding. Remember, we got a bit of funding and we got kind of going at it, and it's just grown and grown from there. And of course, the hope is to grow it even more, and hopefully we'll be able to get into more schools around Ireland and try create more conversations around gambling. But last year, particularly, especially with the Bray Drug and Alcohol Task Force project, we got to do a few parents' talks as well. We got to do a few sports clubs, but generally the schools are the ones that nearly always ask you to come back because it's something they're seeing. So it's been, yeah, an interesting couple of years, a lot of time on the road. It's kind of when we kind of start recording, I was just looking at the background here. I think this is where it all started in this room during COVID, the podcast. And we're back in here. We've a couple of visitors over the summer, so I'm back in the room doing bits and pieces here. No, it's good to be back on doing bits and pieces, but the trends, you mentioned trends, I'm definitely seeing a lot more engagement from students during the Q&A, given their experiences of gambling. Tipsters is coming up a lot. Facebook draws is coming up a lot. The normalization, as we always talked about before, the normalization of gambling within sport and how it's become ingrained in the conversations around sport, ingrained in their experience of watching sport. And on that, like I'm just to start reading this book here, I was just talking to you beforehand, Dara McGee's book. And I'm only in the first kind of about quarter way through it. And he's kind of talking with the rise of, it's interesting enough, like the rise of Paddy Power, he was talking about in the last chapter I read last night. And the marketing genius, like I'd forgotten some of the marketing stuff they'd done, like
Yeah.
the one with the Pope signing for Rangers, the two grannies racing, and then the one about Oscar Pistorius, which I totally forgotten about. Taking odds on whether he'll walk out of the court case, like that kind of.
Yeah.
And I think definitely what came across that I've read so far is that it definitely brought gambling more so into young people's psyche or into their conversations because beforehand, like when I started gambling many years ago, it was the bookies, it was the turf accountants as they call themselves, and I think definitely that mainstream of gambling through sport, and it's a really interesting read for that to kind of see how it built, has definitely brought it into young people, and we're seeing a lot of young people talking about in schools.
Yeah, it's interesting that the tipsters is still such a big thing. And I mean, obviously they've been around for a while. I think we touched on this a couple of weeks ago when we had Niall Davison on, who was a tipster himself for many years and a successful one, although he, despite his financial success or relative financial success at sports betting, mostly horse racing, it still had a very detrimental impact on his life because of his total preoccupation and total obsession with it and all the
Mm.
time that went into it. But some tipsters are also affiliates. So if you don't know what that is, that means that if the tipster is telling you or suggesting that you do your bets through their link to a specific sports book, they're getting a percentage of your lifetime losses, right? So if you sign up as a new customer through their link, they get a percentage of your lifetime losses. So if I'm a tipster, do I want my customers or subscribers or followers to be mostly winning or mostly losing? If I'm getting maybe
Probably a bit of
30%.
both, because if they're mostly winning, you're going to have more repeat customers and more people coming on board. But then ultimately, people will lose more than they'll win ultimately. And it's interesting you said about the affiliates because in the experience of talking to young people, and these are 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds around the country, like, there are a lot of young people who are gambling who have relative success in the two, which is even mad saying it that a 16-year-old or 7-year-old, and they become affiliates where they
Mm.
kind of, and people can sign up using their bonus, especially on casino type games as well. And even, I like to hear of people under the age of 18 who are not even legally allowed to gamble being affiliates for certain cryptocurrency gambling companies. It's a layer of kind of stuff that I think when, like, a friend of mine always used to say, and like every day is a school day. When you go to schools, you do hear a lot more information back of what's going on in gambling terms nowadays. And as we know, with technology, it's definitely, like, I'm becoming an old fart in this space. Like, I've becoming probably less relevant every year as I speak because of technology. But it really opens your eyes to what's going on out there now. And young people will find ways around everything. You ask young people to give them a phone to be able to tell you how to do stuff with cameras and stuff with everything that you wouldn't have a clue how to do. So they're finding ways around it. And what happens with these tipsters then is because they're being bombarded with so much information, people get linked in with these people, and it's that fear of missing out. And if I don't place a bet this time, I'm going to not get that big win. And a lot of it's based on psychology, as we know. But yeah, of course, as you said, like, they're going to want people to lose if they're getting percentage losses, and it's usually a fair amount of money they can make on it as well.
Yeah, and if I'm being fair here to the tipsters or the affiliate tipsters anyway, they don't have to give you bad tips, right? They don't have to do that because that would be bad for their business model. So they
Mm,
could give you their best tips, the ones that they genuinely think are going to win. Now, they're going to have some losses anyway because nobody is a perfect tipster. So that's going to be a factor. And there's also another factor, which is, and I see this all the time, people start off doing what the tipster tells them to do. And
yeah.
then if they're winning, well, then they'll go off script and they'll start doing their own thing. Or if they're
Yes.
losing, then they'll go off script and start chasing losses. And if you're a tipster, you probably know that as well, right? So the tipsters don't have to give you bad tips
Mm.
to make money off your gambling losses. If you have any sort of an unhealthy relationship with gambling ha or have any kind of lack of discipline around gambling, because it takes a lot of discipline to follow exactly what the tipsters are telling you to do. Or am I
Yeah,
going
I
off
think, but
another?
I think it's just hooking people in. I think it's half the thing, isn't it? It's people will get a natural interest in gambling if it's talked about in your friend groups, if it's something you're seeing online, especially if you see tipsters as they do, kind of sh flashing the cash or flying to Cheltenham on helicopters or saying, "Oh, you can win
Mhm.
this." And you see it with cryptocurrency as well, and then you'll have celebrities endorsing it, and obviously their affiliates. Well, we know the big one would be Drake, the Canadian rapper, who gets huge amount of money and gambles huge amount of money online and makes light of it as he does it. So I think more so it's the hook in, I think. And once you're hooked in, um it's like when I started gambling, like, when you get a win on a Saturday, and you want to go back every Saturday and place your bet. And again, in the book, I know I'm going back to the book, but you
Sorry
say,
to
like,
interrupt you, Tony. You never gave the game of the book there. It's called Imitation
oh, sorry,
Games.
yeah, Darren McGee, Imitation Games, How Gambling
Yeah.
Hijacks Sport. I'm sure we can have a link to it afterwards. And but like, I'm only getting into it now. A lot of it's kind of going through some of the legislation on the UK, and as well as I do, I lose kind of my mind goes wobbly during that. But it was definitely like the thing that really hit me, like, one thing, like the Sean Bean ad in 1997. You probably remember it. I just wrote down the, like, football. We know how you feel about it because we feel the same. Sky Sport. Do you remember the ad, the music in the background? Do you not remember, no?
Yeah, vaguely.
It's like
97.
you had the live
Yeah.
and kicking ad,
I
you
was in
had
New
the
Zealand. That's where I know I
yes, you had
wasn't
the live
playing
and
this for
kicking
sure.
ad, you had all these ads. But this, I remember hearing you nearly want to get up and run out and fight for your team after hearing the ad. But then you have like that's 1997. Like you then you have 7 years with Sky Sports. It matters more when there's money on it. So it
Mm.
shifted from being something that was very much something that you would fight for your team and you defend your team and like in the pub you might defend their tactics and all this to something that we're nearly involved in everyone's teams now because we've so much exposure to everything. Like if you look at Soccer Saturday, where I think I mentioned on the podcast before, was one of my biggest fears when I stopped gambling is how am I able to be able to watch Soccer Saturday again without having a bet? Like I just stopped watching it. But it was that
Yeah.
thing you were so ingrained in the experience of your Saturday of looking at all teams rather than just your team. And that's where the book also touches on where the bookie companies and especially the Paddy Powers of the world were brilliant at it. They kind of, the punter's pal, they brought the gambling into the mainstream. They saw the opportunity that it can be more than just horse racing and dog racing. We see the cartoon racing, obviously, but the football was the big one, I think. And as soon as that starts in infiltrating sport or football, money gets involved. I was reading there again about how Betfair saw an opportunity, and I think the sponsor was it Fulham the sponsored. I think I can't remember from the book, 550,000 to sponsor their jersey, and they had loopholes because of the fact that they were different loopholes. I'm not going to go into all that because
Mm.
but it just shows how you could see it coming in. And nowadays you're looking at, the World Cup, all the fallout of the World Cup, just money, 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 money. And that has an impact, I think, as well onto how sport is at the moment. And gambling has become very much a part of that as well. I know it's two separate things, but it's very much a part of it as well. And it just means that everyone is talking about bets. There's a scene in the book that he talks about when Ivan Toney came back from his ban, from gambling
Mm.
ban. Brentford were playing in the with the Hollywood bets on their jerseys, all the hoarding. And I think the other team scored first, and he was at the game and he mentioned that he just saw everyone going to the phones. So as soon as the game goes in a live match, everyone's going to their phones to kind of go, right, can I get back on and place another bet, or can I get in and see what's going to happen? And he just said the ironicness or the irony, not ironic, the irony of it all was when Tony equalized, it was just called a brilliant moment because he's back, but they never made the link through all the gambling aspects of it. So gambling's become so much kind of there visually, as we know from advertisement, but also ingrained in the sport that the younger people in the schools, just to bring it right back to the initial kind of thing we're talking about, the younger people in the schools, it's all they're seeing as we know it, like they're being bombarded with gambling ads, but also it's become such a part of that conversation with young people. And then you throw in the tipsters, you throw in the soccer Saturdays, you throw in the free bets, you throw in the
Fantasy football.
fancy football, all this kind of stuff. It does lend itself to something become very, very, very normalized. And when something becomes
Mm.
normalized, something everyone doing, and you will get a certain percentage of people then, because of the psychology of it all, will, like me, fall off that cliff. And then you're into trouble. And we're seeing a lot more young people get in trouble around gambling.
Yeah. Yeah, and look, we're all wired to be more impulsive or to have less impulse control when we're
Mm.
younger. Like, I mean, the male
Yeah.
brain isn't fully developed until about 28, right? And males tend to be bigger risk takers anyway. And look, females, the brain isn't fully developed until up until 25 or something like that. So, and that last part of the brain to develop is the part that controls the impulses,
Yep.
right? Which is a weird evolutionary thing, but that's what we're stuck with. That's the
Mm.
hardware that we're stuck with. But I mean, you were saying there, like that there you've come across young people in the schools who are already not just gambling, but are gambling affiliates
Yeah,
already.
there's
And like,
affiliates,
yeah,
they're finding ways, like, like I read something online there about how KYCs know your customers work. They're finding
yeah,
ways around all this stuff. And like AI is such a great tool for a lot of things, but it's also a great tool where people find ways around getting
yeah,
bets on. And that's why it is so important for the legislation regulation to be robust and get fully functional in Ireland because yeah, I don't think you'll ever stop it because they're so far ahead of us. Technology so far, you'll find loopholes. Same as anyone in recovery, if you really want to place a bet, you find a loophole in your time access money. You'll find
Mm.
ways around it, and sometimes very ingenious ways of finding ways around it. But young people, yeah, there's people are affiliates. They're fine. There's this one student somewhere down the country was talking about this kind of tipping system where people can tip you money on sites and you can bet with it. So then you can bypass the the kind of age verification stuff. And then you're kind of thinking, well, yeah, that's all well and good, but what are they tipping for? Are they looking for images? Are they looking for,
Yeah.
it becomes a little bit more worrying when you hear this. And then, you know, if people have big wins, as happened with me at the start, it does change your brain. You see it differently. And then the ease, we talk about like being able to place bets easily nowadays with phones. It's also you can kind of transfer money very quickly as well. So that chasing element is there, and young people can transfer money through Revolut and all this kind of stuff. I think it's a perfect storm of gaming and gambling to become a huge thing with young people. And we're seeing a lot of that with young people as well. I was at a talk a while ago, and a student, a very funny student, come up to me afterwards. He said, "Do you mind me asking?" He said, "What happened that you ended up going to jail?" And I kind of, "Oh, did you only come in at the end of the talk?" I said, "No, I was here, but I was asleep." I said, okay, well, I don't mind people. I always say I don't mind people falling asleep. But then I said, do
Yeah.
you mind me asking why you were asleep? Like, you're not finding the talk interesting? He said, no, I was up all night gaming. I just couldn't keep my eyes open. And because of like when you were on gaming years ago, you had your Atari in your sitting room, you were told to go to bed at 10 o'clock. But nowadays, young people are gaming through the night, going on quests.
Mm.
And the new Grand Theft Auto, I was only talking to Daniel, who we had in the podcast there a while ago, and he said that the new Grand Theft Auto game is coming out. It's going to be interesting to see how much of the Diamond Resort Casino is even more interactive for young people and normalizing it for young people gambling as well.
Mm.
So like some of the comments from the gaming part of the presentation are very funny, like in some ways, I suppose. Like I asked them what's their experience of Grand Theft Auto Casino. I said, oh well, no sir, I went in, I lost all my money in casino, but then I went back in and robbed it. I got my money back, which can't happen in the real world, obviously. But
Mm.
obviously, and then they'll say like they'll talk about even winning money on high level slots within the Grand Casino game and getting the same buzz or rush, like because it means so much within the game. So if you look at all those things put together for young people, being bombarded with gambling messages, but also gambling within games, and there's so much gambling within all these games now, even Roblox, spinny things, and all this stuff in there. I think I wouldn't say they're like young people groomed, but young people are being conditioned to gambling a lot earlier than maybe I would have or you would have as a young person. And then you go back to the brain not being fully developed, overwhelmed with all this stats, overwhelmed with lights, sounds. I think it is a perfect storm, and we are, or I am definitely seeing that. Like I visited a lot of schools last year, and you'll often see lads nudging each other saying, "Oh, you better be listening to this here, Johnny, because this is something you." So it is known even
Mm.
within young people that people are struggling. So it's scary in lots of ways.
Yeah, and that's interesting you're saying about the casino and Grand Theft Auto. They put that in there a good while ago in one of the earlier versions. That
2019, I think
wow.
the last edition of it, I think it was
Yeah.
2019. I think if I now don't quote me on that, but I think it was the last version of it, which I think it's a while ago since it came out.
Yeah. Yeah. And you
And
can't gamble with real money in there. It's like
no, but I
it's
think
all
it's a bit like
virtual.
FIFA. You can buy virtual currency within the game. I think you can buy virtual currency. Like it doesn't matter if it's real money or not, but what it
No,
means to
no,
you
but
within the
that's
game. Yeah,
yeah.
but you know that as well as I do. Like what it means within the game. You'll often hear stories that people, young people, spend their parents' credit cards or max them out on player packs on FIFA
Yeah.
because they've already bought one. It automatically loops. You can go in and keep on buying them. And over a weekend, someone who wants to beat his friends and the ultimate team will max out a credit card for €5,000 to do it to get the
Mm.
ultimate team. And then we know the architecture, the game architecture, design of the game is like, I'm sure we talked about all this before. It's been so long since I've been on, so apologies if anyone's listening. I'm gonna repeat myself, but you'll have for the player packs or loot boxes in FIFA is like, it gives you the country first, then the position, then the player. So you get Argentina, you get striker, you kind of get Messi, and then you might get someone like Di Maria or someone in the olden days, and you're devastated. So part of you is like cheap and chasing the losses there. I nearly got Messi. I need to go in again. I'm going to
Mm.
get it the next time. So like if you have young people, and this is very normalized, like player packs and but like some of them, like I may start bring my little notebook with me because some of them mention other games, like even one of them mentioned that farmer, the farmer simulation game as gambling element in it. I didn't think
Really?
how could a farm, the one. So there's all again because obviously it engages people because psychology engages people. So it's a way for them to make money in-game purchases.
Mhm.
And a lot of them would be linked to gambling. So while a lot of the talk is around gambling and loss disguises wins, some of the psychology, and I'm working on kind of changing on the second part of the presentation as we speak. Um, the gaming element of what you're seeing or how it's kind of ingrained in with it, or even the blurred line, as I say, between the two of them, it's becoming a thing that students are very much talking about and saying like, yeah, we feel this is gambling. We don't like this element of it, but yeah, it's out there and it's rampant.
Yeah, you touched on something important there, just for anyone listening or watching. That yeah, when Tony does the talks in the schools, like the first part of the talk is your own personal story, your lived experience of addiction and recovery, and then the second half is psychoeducation
Mm.
on gambling, harm, gambling, and you touch on gaming as well as part
Yeah,
of it. So gambling and say video gaming, harm prevention,
yeah.
psychoeducation.
It is.
Yeah.
I think that the story bit, like it does engage students even to today, thankfully. But I think what I try to do is link this to psychology and try nearly couple it with the different segments of my journey. I suppose the first bet, how I use gambling to cope with other stuff, the actual online gambling on credit, chasing losses, chasing wins, the feeling, the escapism, and you kind of link it all back in. Looking at sunk cost fallacy, gambler's fallacy, all that kind of stuff. So it does tie it back in. I'm going to try and make it a little bit more interactive this year if I can. It's very difficult if you've a class of 100 to make it too interactive, but just even to get people thinking about even more about their own or their friends' gambling as well. So that's what I'm working on at the moment. So hopefully it kind of the ideas kind of come out and work well within the classroom, which kind of can be difficult at times. But like generally, it's always a good sign when you get invited back. It's I've
Yeah.
been very humbled to be voted best talker here a lot of time, and I often do podcasts with students afterwards, and one of the students came second in All Ireland in the podcast we done on gambling as well. So it's
Well,
lovely to say that, yeah. So it's like that. It show, and you get. I'm sure you get the same. You get a lot of young people contacting about projects. I would in the schools like about students. It stokes an interest in them listening to the talk that they end up doing projects in fifth and sixth year on it for the social part of their schoolwork. So it's good to like that's the nicest part of the work. And then obviously when you get an email from parents, which happens quite a bit as well, saying, we've had a conversation on gambling based on the fact that you shared your story. Even like I was just saying to you off camera as well, like someone contacted me today saying that he got the book as a present for his son at Christmas, and he the whole family ended up reading it, and he ended up writing a song around it, or doing so. So it's lovely to hear that the story or anyone's story or anyone's experience, and lived experience is great for that it gets people thinking about, talking about, and maybe even trying to do something kind of on from that as well. I think it's very, very important. That's what you're always hoping to achieve in the schools, is to leave and people to talk about. Not in a way of, oh, see your man, he came in, he done this, he done that, and say, geez, yeah, maybe it's something that we need to look at a little bit more, or be aware that it can come down the line as well.
yeah.
So it's been interesting 3 or 4 years. And again, on the other flip side of it, I'm never home, as we know. But it's so worthwhile, especially when you come out of school and you're after definitely engaging with a few people in there, and teachers as well. So it's good.
Yeah, yeah, and look, that is important because people connect with stories. People start glazing over when you start talking about numbers and stats and
Yeah,
facts and figures and all that. So you need to get people engaged and interested. They need the personal story. That's an
yeah.
essential part of it.
They need to connect to some part. Like even like when I'm talking about how my mom passed away before she saw the fact that I got back on my feet. The teachers will connect that because that well, most of us have lost people or
Mm.
know someone who died from cancer. So like it even connects to that bit of I never got to make amends, and it makes them think about their own life of. In same ways like when we hear when any of us go through a loss, we do reflect on our own situation. So you're trying to get people to reflect by listening to a story, and some students will connect to the fact that, the you know the relationship with my daughter. Some people a lot of them will connect to that bit of it, like, like, because students come up afterwards and say, like, it's totally not related to gambling. Like, I've, I'm not with my dad, or I'm not, all that kind of stuff. So
Mm.
it can get people thinking about different things. So that it's you use the social problem as gambling is kind of like the vehicle for having a conversation around lots of different issues as well. So it's so much more than just the gambling stories, which is nice as well, because I suppose I've been talking about this for 14, 15 years. And sometimes you feel it does just become around the story. And on the flip side, I think I was saying to you, like, I done a great podcast with Sheila Shoiga over the summer. It was a day of the protest, took me 5 hours to get to Galway. And it was a 2.25 hour chat. And it was a long chat. And the amount of people reached out on the back of that, like, who haven't heard the story, or who saw it from a different point of view, because obviously when you do a different podcast, you might bring out different elements of the story. So you often feel like, geez, everyone has heard it, or everyone's be sick of hearing the different stories. But I think they're the ones that resonate, as you mentioned, resonate a lot with people. And I know a lot of people have contacted me on the back of the early episodes we done on the podcast, where we had a lot of guests on, and saying it was great to hear, because they connected some part of their story that mightn't be in my story. And again, it's great to see that. And it's great to see, I think it's great to see students doing podcasts. Some of the questions are brilliant in them as well. So
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah, and look, I mean, because there's another way of approaching kind of gambling harm prevention education in schools, which would be train the trainer, say like someone like yourself might go in, train a room full of teachers and give them materials, and then the teachers would go off and do the module, or do the talk or the session on gambling harm prevention. Now, my personal view is that is never going to have the same impact as having somebody come in, talk about their own lived experience of addiction and recovery in the room.
mm.
Or, well, I suppose we're
Yeah,
probably
yeah,
we're probably biased here, but what do you think?
yeah. I think there definitely is. You could nearly marry the two. I think you could do a little bit of like, I often wonder, like, as I get older, like, is my story less relevant? Is it? I know there's a sensationalized part of it, but I think if we can get more people talking openly about their experience, especially younger people, or even if it's videos or whatever podcast, where it might be, I think, yeah, that the story bit. Anytime you hear a story, or watch a film, or listen to a podcast, or whatever it is, you'll connect emotionally to it in some way. It's like, that's how advertisement works. You connect emotionally to
Mm,
something, then you want to buy it. Won't even go down that road again with my buying stuff. But
mm,
I think if you had that, but with also the teachers trained to understand what to look out for, trained in how to even signposting, trained in different aspects of knowing some of the psychology of it, it can be a nice follow-on piece, or even a piece to do before someone comes in to speak about it. So I think it can
mm.
definitely, the two of them could work really well together. But on the flip side of that, if I had a teacher telling me, you have a teacher telling you what to do most days, if they come in and talk about a very serious subject, it can depends on the teacher obviously as well. Like, sometimes you connect better with other teachers, but you might lose some of it in translation maybe.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, yeah, you touched on something earlier on with the God save for me. The video game, the really
Or
violent
Grand
one,
Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto. I could see GTA in my head, and I was going, "What
Mm,
does that stand for again?" I'm
yeah,
getting very old. Yeah, GTA. So, like in the virtual casino, like yeah, I'm sure you've seen this working with clients and counseling over the years. Like sometimes people are when they're stopping gambling on things like slots, or they might have just run out of money,
yeah,
they'll play the virtuals, right? They play the
yes.
free ones. So if you go to any of the online casinos, usually there's a free version, and they'll give you X amount of kind of credits to play on the thing. And now some people allege that the win rates, so the return to player rate on the virtual ones where there's no real money at stake, are higher than on the real ones.
I
I'd
would
love to see
imagine it
some.
is. Yeah, I would imagine it is. Like, I used to do a lot of now again, the graphics on them would be a lot more advanced today than when I was doing it 13, 14, 15 years ago. But between gambling sessions, or when there was no money there, I was online playing, cartoon Texas Hold'em was a big thing. Like
Mm.
I was just saying, like it's one thing I always miss. I love the Texas Hold'em game, but you do it just to bridge that gap. You know you're not going to make money, but even to get a high score, or beat your previous high score, or beat someone, or even the sounds or the visuals in the game will connect to some part of the brain that will be very much connected to the gambling part of it. And when I started doing that, then I started dabbling into online casinos when I had money in the account as well. And there was when you see my gambling history, there's most of it sports book, but there was a time where I dabbled into online casino, and then that's because it became very normalized. So if you're a lot of these games, again, back then there was a lot of poker on telly as well. Remember all
Mm.
the tournaments were always on late at night. So again, you're finished gambling, you're watching, you're getting that sense of a buzz or exciting watching a hand within, even though it's nothing, you're not going to make money on it. It's just staying connected to that some sort of a buzz or rush. So if you look at the casino games, yes, they are designed, or the return to player, I think they will be a lot easier to win on Grand Theft Auto Casino, online casino. And that gives a young person a skewed view of what gambling is, because they learn about all the different games, but then their perception is that I'm going to win more often. And then when they get to the real world gambling, I'm sure the return to player isn't set quite as high as it would be in a casino. So I'd say you're right on that. But the online graphics are, even on the 2019 version of the
Yeah.
game, are so similar. And even the video I showed the students, like, it has even for it to have virtual racing, and a clip of virtual racing, and like lonely stepbrother takes the race is the thing. So even we know that from the virtuals, or even from real horse names, you'll find a connection to the horse name. Like if you
Mm.
are lonely stepbrother, if you
Mm.
are,
Mm.
you
Mm.
know, Mary's Dream, and you have an Auntie Mary or
Mm.
something, we'll find connections through it. So I think the return to player is one aspect, but also the connection to the thing, and that's where you go to sports betting. Like I was just thinking when I was reading the book, I was sitting out in the back garden just reading. I was reflecting on my own thing of, watch Liverpool, love Liverpool, you connect to a team because of their values or because of their players when you're younger. But nowadays people are connecting so many teams because they won a bet on them. Like I had a client years ago, and if he won a big bet on the team, he'd buy the jersey of the team.
Mm.
And if it was the first goal scorer, you buy the goal scorers, because you
Mm.
connect to the player, to the team. So young people are connecting to, I know I'm rambling as usual, but young people are connecting to different aspects of gambling. But when you go into the casino game, their return to player will be bigger to get more money by status in the game, and they connect to the fact that they can beat their players online, whether it's FIFA with their ultimate team, or whether it's getting that penthouse in the Grand Theft Auto, so they could feel better within themselves, going on quests in the middle of the night using avatars, so that it might ease some of the insecurities they might have with themselves to become a different person within the game. And we see that with gamble, young people. We know that if you have money or you're winning bets, you become known as someone who is good at something. And I talk about that a
Mm.
lot in my own story. So I think there's a lot of different elements to it. And then if you couple that with, in certain platforms, you will win easier, it does create that whole psyche, doesn't it?
Yeah, and the other thing is, I imagine, well, you can tell me if this comes up in the schools, but some of the young people are watching streamers on things like Twitch and YouTube and other platforms,
Yeah.
playing things like online slots or other kind of gambling games, who they know are sponsored by the gambling company and who are doing massive stakes and, sometimes incurring massive losses, but sometimes having astronomical wins because
Yeah.
they're doing massive stakes. And you mentioned Drake earlier on. There are many, many others of these people who are sponsored
Yeah.
by gambling companies, and that completely skews your perception. Because if you're playing with the house's money that they've freely given, you didn't win it. They're
But
paying you to promote their product, right?
but
You don't incur any personal losses, and when you win, you get to keep the winnings. Well, that's not really representative of how gambling
exactly, yeah,
actually
exactly. But it's
works.
also they're being paid to do it. But like there's a person in America called Camadare. I think it's Game Quitters.
Yeah.
And he has an accompanying video to it came out years ago, accompanying video to the Grand Theft Auto launch many years ago. And he talks about a fella on that a fella called Big Boss for the Win, who will be an online streamer, a YouTuber, millions of
Mm.
followers. But in his video, he goes through how to win more money in that casino in Grand Theft Auto. Like if you want to win more money, go to the high stake games, put on more money, you will win more money back. So if you have a young person going in there, oh, I'm going to go to these high stake games, it creates a certain mindset around it. So
Mm.
it's not real. But then, and that's only within a game. So you have social media influencers, and again, that world is a lot of it's totally alien to me. Like, but that's so much out there with influencers. You look at OnlyFans, you look at all these different channels that are out there now, and all these different people will put up videos about how to do anything. Um, and if you have people putting up videos how to win more money within the game so that you win more status in the game to beat your friends, so you get your affirmations met within that game, people will engage with that and watch videos. And then the logic becomes, yeah, like, I'm going to put more money in that, I'm going to win more money back. When you said, like, even when we'll say these affiliates are putting on huge amount of money, I'm sure a lot of people saying, that's grand, it's only this. They'll downplay the loss and sure I'll win it back. I'll just put more money on. And again, people are being bombarded and bombarded with all these imagery, videos, lights, sounds, content, especially content. You're going to have a certain amount that will stick to a certain cohort of people who might be more susceptible in that moment of their lives to becoming addicted to something, whether it's gaming, gambling, pornography, shopping, whatever it is. And like, it's scary. It really is scary. And that's what you're seeing within the schools. You've seen a lot of pornography, young lads talking about pornography as well, and talking very openly about pornography. And that does give a skewed, you know, outlook on sexual behavior, or what's deemed to be, like, I was at a talk a while ago during the summer as well, where a woman called Ruth Breslin was talking about kind of pornography and stuff like that. And it also someone called Matthew Sadlier was talking about social media like Snapchat and stuff like that. And I came away from that talk. I'm very rarely shocked by stuff, but I came away from that talk feeling very uneasy around what young people are being exposed to.
Yeah,
Like, she was saying that young people's experience of sex would be about choking out people, about stepbrothers, stepmoms, all this kind of
yeah,
stuff, and fantasies about people in uniforms, whatever. And it gives this kind of skewed view. So if this becomes their normal reality of what sex is, or what gaming is, or what social media is, or what gambling is, it will create a certain narrative for a young person that they can carry into their adult life as well. And that's scary, especially when it comes around gambling. I know I'm going off topic a bit, but it kind of
no,
you
no,
do see it. Younger people are being bombarded with so much stuff, content, stuff, videos, everything. And it's a lot of it is gambling as well. And
Mm.
it needs to be regulated, it needs to be curtailed, but it won't be online. And like we can do, the government will put really strong measures in place for radio, I'm sure, TV, but it'll still slip through the cracks where people are watching a lot of their content.
Yeah, well, one of the things before we finish up, like one of the things that the new gambling regulations in Ireland will do will be that you will, under the law, it says you'll only be able to see promotions from a gambling company, let's say Paddy Power as an example, if you follow Paddy Power on that platform. So if you want to see Paddy Power content on
Yeah.
Instagram, you have to follow Paddy Power, right?
Yes.
Don't know how they're going to enforce that, but that's in the law. That would be
Yeah.
good. So
It'd be
like, and if
brilliant.
they
Yeah.
if they can get it to work, that would be really good.
But then you'd wonder how much then will the marketing geniuses and all these companies start making more people follow them.
Well,
That's the flip side. Yeah.
we're involved in a project with the University of Ulster. Yeah, remember the talk we did down
Mm.
in our club? You
Yes.
did. I was at it. And part of their research found when they looked at the type of advertising that the kind of big bookies or big gambling companies are doing at the moment, let's take Paddy Power because they'd be very high profile. Most of their advertising doesn't mention gambling at all.
Mm.
It's little comedy skits, but it has Paddy Power branding. It doesn't tell you to go to the Paddy Power website, it doesn't mention betting, anything to do with gambling. It's just comedy skits because people like that content, and some of it is very good. Look,
Oh,
it's
some is
entertaining.
brilliant in fairness.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, if I'm being very, very, very skeptical here, which I always am when it comes to the gambling companies in particular, they're looking down the line going, if a gambling advertising ban comes in, you mentioned loopholes earlier on. Where's the loophole?
Yeah.
Well, we just make loads of other content that everybody knows is Paddy Power content.
Yeah,
It
and
doesn't mention
yeah,
gambling.
but a great example of that is during the World Cup, like when the Levi's Stadium had to cover their logo, they just covered it in the shape of the Levi's, whatever it is, not it's true kind of, I don't know,
Yeah,
like a dicky ball type shape,
yeah,
and like that's marketing genius because more people are talking about like and
yeah.
again like the gambling companies spend a lot of money on marketing, a lot of money on psychology. They will find ways around it. So I think we have to, while there is some brilliant legislation regulation coming in, like that's a really good idea. We just need to be a little bit more kind of proactive, more than we were before in staying kind of up with technology and up on loopholes and stuff like that. But it's yeah, it's something that's not going away anytime soon, as we know. It's there since the dawn of time. But it's so like I think what really got me about just bringing right back to the book before we finish up. What really got me reading the Imitation Games book is that how much it has shifted in a few years, the 20, 30 years, which is not a long time. And again, you have internet, smartphones, stuff like that as well, and coupled with that. And I think it, as I always say in the talk, was the perfect storm of technology and gambling at a time when sport was changing as well. And Sky Sports had a bit to do with that as well, because it brought the football into from the dreary 1980s where hooliganism into
Mhm.
something that's a huge vehicle for gambling at the moment. And it'd be interesting what way it goes. But I'm looking forward to reading the rest of the book. I'll give you my synopsis of it another time. We might even get Dara on. Maybe I might reach out to him. Hopefully,
Yeah, I would try and reach out to
if
Dara. I
you're
spoke
listening,
to him
Dara,
previously.
please come
Yeah,
on because it really
yeah,
would be good to. It really is. It's one of the better books I've read in a long time on gambling as well. So it's really, really good. But
yeah. Any brief, because I have a counseling session in about 4 minutes.
lovely.
Brief words of advice if there's parents listening to this and they're hunting around looking for information and they're worried about the young person in their lives, their child,
Yeah.
getting into gambling, or is there any advice you'd give them?
Yeah, I suppose just reach out and look for the bit more information, isn't it? Like, like Spun Out have a really good segment on gambling there at the moment. There's a lot of good information for parents on GamFam, who we have a good relationship with. We do,
Yeah,
get the referrals
actually,
in. The
GRAI, the
GRAI have it, yeah, have a
gambling
really, I
regulator,
was
have
going to
it.
say that they have really good, and they're starting to put more and more information on. So that would hopefully even in the next couple of months, that becomes even more of a hub for information. I think it will once it really gets kicks off, hopefully now next year. Um, yeah, it's a. I think we're like as I always say when I finished gambling only 15 years ago, there was no information out there about anything. I had to try figure it out, but there's a lot of information. Like I'm always open to anyone calling. I've taken many many calls over the summer from parents 20-minute conversation just to
Yeah,
kind of point me in the right direction. That's what we try. That's what we do. I know you do that as well. So if
yeah.
any parents out there, just drop an email, drop a text, make a call, and we'll get back and we'll give them some information. I'm happy enough to take calls, especially when I'm driving on the road. I do a lot of my work while I'm driving, talking to people.
Hands free on your hands
Of
free,
course, hands free.
Tony.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Since I've been talking last, my old car blew up, so I have hands free on the new one, so it's good. Yeah, brilliant to get back onto the podcast. As always, dreading coming on, but really enjoyed the chat. Yeah, I look forward. We'll do a few more maybe over the next couple of weeks and see if we can get a little bit of a different things going for parents as well. I think is one we need to
Yeah.
probably look at too.
Brilliant. All
Brilliant.
right, Tony. Thanks a million and thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time. Bye. Bye.